I'd like to start by sharing an example with you. A few days ago, I was working with a young teenage student. And it just so happened, and we were working online, that I logged into our online classroom a few moments before we were actually about to start. And the thing that I noticed was that my student was working on his English homework from school. And that homework entailed translating a few sentences into English, and the sentences included comparatives. And the student was really struggling with that. He was trying to put the words into his own mouth, and he was speaking out loud, trying to translate the sentences from his homework. But then the time was for us to start, so we kick-started the lesson. And when we started, there was an exercise that the student had to do. There was a set of two images that he had to describe by comparing and contrasting the images. And what he did was he talked about the pictures in the most fluent and perfect English you can ever hear. I was really surprised because, judging by that first moment that I oversaw in the lesson, when he was translating something from his homework, it was almost as if I was talking to a different mind. So I got very interested in exploring and investigating this filter of translation. I thought that there might be something to it that prevents people from expressing themselves naturally in the second language. And today I want to share with you a theory that I arrived at. I'm very passionate about this model that I created. I don't want to say that it's like a patent of sorts, or that I'm very original or extraordinary in sharing this piece of insight. But what I actually want to do is hope that me sharing this with you today will inspire you to start relying more on your own direct experience when learning vocabulary and grammar, rather than the filter of translation. So that's what I called it. So here is my theory in a nutshell. The farther you're removed from your actual experience, the slower you're processing. Let me explain what I mean by that. I want you to think of reality as having different orders. There is an order of reality when you're experiencing stuff, and that's what I call experience. So basically, experience is perception. When you're hearing stuff, like you're hearing my voice right now, or when you are seeing stuff, like you're seeing your room, or you're seeing your screen, or this video, or a person sharing something on it. That's the direct experience that you're having of reality at this current moment. Notice that when you're looking at experience, or when you are hearing experience, there comes a conceptual representation of that experience. And that is something we call language. As you're looking at this video right now at the screen, maybe a word appears, YouTube, or screen, or video, or teacher. That word, that concept, is not equal to experience or reality itself. It's a concept that we put on top of that experience. So if we here have experience, the word, video, screen, you name it, is an overlay on experience. The reason I'm mentioning this is because this will be important for us to lay the groundwork for what I'm going to describe today. So the purpose of language is to represent our experience. And here is how it works. Say we want to communicate that we don't like carrot in our soup. In order to do that, we need to have a concept of a carrot. So here I have a little prop for you, a carrot. Here is what happens in our mind as we're conceptualizing a part of experience that we call carrot. The first thing that we need to do is to have an experience of something. So we have an experience very early in our lives, in our mother tongue. We have an experience right when we're born. We have no idea what to call that thing. We haven't even segregated it from the totality of experience yet. That is something that our mind has yet to do. So we observe something. There is an element of perception that we have. There is just perception, okay? And then we segregate a part of that experience, and we conceptualize of it as a separate object. Notice that in actual experience, there is no such thing as a separate object. In order to perceive separate objects, we need to start seeing our reality as segregated into objects. And so we do with this object that we give a name to. We segregate it, we carve it out of experience, and now we see it as a separate experience and we give it a name. We say a carrot. And then, after we have learned a concept for this object, we start representing this object as a carrot. So when we say the word carrot, what we actually do is we conjure up the image of a carrot, the taste of a carrot, the experience, in other words, of a carrot. And now when we're in a restaurant and we're communicating to the waiter that we don't want carrot in our soup, we're making use of that concept that we learned earlier, of a carrot. So here is how it happens in our mother tongue. At first we have perception of reality, which is not segregated into experiences, but then we learn conceptually to split this perception into separate objects and experiences. And then we give those objects and experiences names that become words and concepts that we use to represent parts of our reality. And when it comes to our mother tongue, we do that very naturally. We tend to associate parts of experience with the language that we use to represent it. It's so natural and so normal for us that we don't even think twice when we're doing this. That's why we conflate the language we speak with parts of reality that it is meant to represent. Therefore, perhaps when I'm communicating this to you, this may sound very obvious and not even worth questioning, but in fact, in reality, we don't think about it very much. We just tend to think of the world around us as the objects in their own rights because we have words for those objects. So we don't even think twice about that. Now here is what happens when we're learning our second language. Let's say in our first language, which is Russian, we have learned that distinction, carrot, and in Russian that will be markov. So now we want to learn the second language, which is English. And how do we go about that? Naturally. Here is what we do. To roll back, in the very beginning, we learned the word markov, which represents a part of reality in Russian. Then, perhaps we want to learn English as our second language. So we go to a language school, we start learning ourselves. And then at a certain point, we encounter the word carrot, which in English is called to represent markov. So now we start associating the word markov with carrot. What happens is we take a step back from the actual experience of a carrot, or markov in our case. So in our experience, what we call markov is this thing, but then if we want to learn English and we want to learn the word carrot, that will be a step back. So here we'll have the actual experience, here we'll have the word markov, and here we'll have the word carrot. We go through a conceptual filter of markov in order to represent an actual experience, which we have here. What is interesting is that in our language learning experience, the word that we learn, in our case, this will be a carrot, does not correspond to the experience that both an English person and a Russian person have. The experience is a single thing. It's common it's shared by both an English person and a Russian person. But what people tend to do as language learners, and I've done this myself and then I proved it to be very ineffective, is that instead of going for the experience directly and creating a concept for the experience directly, we create a concept for a concept. And when a time comes when we want to make use of that experience that is represented by the concept, we don't go for it directly by mentioning the concept that corresponds to experience, but rather we conjure up a concept that corresponds to a concept that corresponds to experience. Therefore, it's very slow, and we often spend a lot of time trying to remember a concept that corresponds to a concept. Therefore, we lack fluency. We can't speak very accurately. Now, one thing that I want to draw to your awareness is that everything is a distinction. Everything that we represent in language is a specific distinction. So perhaps when we think about a word such as rendering, there might not be a direct Russian translation of that word. So when we want to learn the word rendering, it might be impossible for us to learn it purely through translation. When we want to learn that word, but we're lacking an experience that corresponds to that word that we could go to through our first language, we are facing a problem. How do we learn that word? How do we remember it? Those of us who work in editing software are aware of the word rendering, because sometimes you might need to render a video or to render a clip that you're working on. But those of us who don't have that experience, don't have a referential experience, and by the way, that carrot could be called a referential experience, that aspect or part of reality that we're creating a concept for. Because we don't have that experience, we can't create a concept directly. So what do? We need to create an experience. With many abstract words, we may be lacking experience. Therefore, we might find it very difficult to use the vocabulary for the experiences that we don't have. A person might find it very difficult to use the word frustrated, for example, and say, I am frustrated, if they have no direct experience of what frustration is. So they can't say that. What's the solution? Start creating distinctions for words, or rather start creating distinctions for experiences that are not present in your mother tongue. Every time you're learning something, connect with the experience of that something rather than that intermediary concept in your first language. Don't take that roundabout route. Go directly for the experience. Create feeling distinctions. And by feeling, I don't mean emotions. I mean direct experiences of the things that you want to learn concepts for. By doing so, your experience will become richer because you will be able to segregate a split reality in many more ways than perhaps you could before. And then your mind will become more nuanced because you will start seeing more nuanced and subtle distinctions in your reality. Distinctions don't exist, but rather you create distinctions. The more distinctions you can create, the richer your vocabulary is. Sometimes people ask me, oh Lilia, this is a common comment I get. How come your vocabulary is so nice and flowery? What did you do? Did you just cram in those words? And what did you do? How did you do it? And the reason my vocabulary may look and sound flowery is that I have distinctions in my experience of all the things that I'm talking about. If you do not have an experience of a concept, it won't stick. When I'm saying the word concept, be aware that I'm not only talking of single words, like units of language. Concept may be an idiom, or a phrasal verb, a collocation, a whole sentence. Get out of it. That's a concept that we have a feeling distinction for. And if we try to learn a Russian correspondent or your first language correspondent expression, then we'll have to go through that intermediary concept to get to the experience that we want to express. And they will be lengthy. That will take time. So why do it? your expression will become way more accurate. You may have noticed that in exams, candidates may sound a little bit alien to a native English speaker because the words that they use are not accurate expressions of the experiences that they want to convey. Your thinking will become way more nuanced. And last but not least, you will notice that you are the creator of your own reality. Because basically, what is reality other than a collection of distinctions that you make subconsciously?